do I get Swedish friends? This is probably the second most asked question we get after what is the difference between en and et. For some context, there is a rumor out there that it's very difficult to make Swedish friends. So how do you get Swedish friends? Well, I will help you. Here are my 10 steps. Step 1. Learn the Swedish words for friends. By learning this, you can know if a Swede sees you as a friend or not. The two most common words for friends in Swedish is vän and kompis, and these can be used interchangeably. In plural, that would be vänner or kompisar. Then we also have a slang version of friend, and that is polare. In plural, it's also polare. So if a Swede says any of these words when they refer to you, then they see you as their friend. For example, jag har en kompis som bor i Kazakstan. Han heter Karim. If a Swede refers to you as their bekant, kollega, or arbetskamrat, then you're not there yet. Maybe they have fun with you at work, but you won't get that invitation to their summer house yet. So how do you get that invitation to their summer house? Step 2. Learn to be patient. Ha tålamod. In Sweden, it just takes more time. Not only for foreigners, also for Swedes, trying to make friends with other Swedes. At least in my personal experience. I remember when I lived in Argentina and Spain. There, you could get a new friend already on the airplane. Maybe not a forever friend, but at least a friend that you could hang out with during your stay in the country. Someone who would invite you to hang out with them and their friends while you were there. In Sweden, it rarely happens so fast. That's why you need to be very patient. An observation that many foreigners do is that Swedes have a tendency to only hang out with their childhood friends or friends from high school. In other words, they rarely make new friends. In order to do this video, I had to reflect a bit on myself actually. And just like most Swedes, most of my friends are from high school or from childhood. So this observation that many foreigners do is perhaps true. But I do have some newer friends too. Foreigners actually, that I met here in Sweden. How come? I thought about it for a while, and then I realized that just like my high school friends, I shared some kind of context together with these foreign friends. And we shared this context for a longer period of time. And this is what brought us together. For example, I met my Irish friend at the women's circle. I met my British friend working from the same co-working space. I met my Colombian friend in an English course. And then I met my Sri Lankan friend while I was studying my master in international relations. And so on. As you can see, we spend some time together in a specific place for a longer period of time. That's why you need to be patient. And here I'm also touching a little bit of the third step. Find a place and an activity where Swedes are. So don't go to places with only foreigners if you want Swedish friends, because most Swedes aren't there. And again, when you have found that place and activity, be patient, because you will need to be there for a longer period of time before the Swede sees you as their friend. In my case, even though I liked my foreign friends right away, it took me perhaps 1 month before I made next move. Swedes are, in general, a bit more shy, and we need more time to get to know someone in order to invite them to our home. A very private place. But I will talk more about why later in this video. And just so you know, most of the things I've said just applies to friendship. For dating and hooking up with Swedes, it works completely differently. Almost the opposite. You can see their private place very fast. But that is another video. But back to how to make Swedish friends. Step 4. Ask a Swede out for a fika. So this is how it works. When a Swede meets a new friend at work, at the gym, learning Japanese, or whatever activity they do, they will show you that they like you by asking if you have any plans before or after your common activity. And if they don't ask you, because they're a little bit shy or slow, then you should ask them. Har du lust att ta en fika med mig? Or go out for beers? Then you can say, vill du hänga med och ta en öl? Or go and grab something to eat together. Then maybe you can say this phrase. Jag är hungrig. Tänkte gå och käka någonting. Vill du följa med? And sometimes you can just ask if they want to go out with you for a walk, to have some fresh air. Especially if you're doing a course together. A classic phrase could be, hänger du med ut och tar lite frisk luft? By asking any of these activities that I mentioned, it's a bigger chance that the Swede will say yes to you, since it isn't too much of a commitment, because you were already out, so you can easily grab a fika before or after your normal activity together with some new people. Do you know what I mean? So, if a Swede asks you for a fika, beer or a walk, it's a good sign. Same thing if you ask them and they say yes, it's also a good sign. If they say no and then add "jag har tvättstuga", then it's a bad sign. They are probably not that into you. And if they really have tvättstugan, then they will probably suggest you another day and time instead. Jag kan inte tyvärr idag, men jag kan ta en fika nästa vecka istället. Hur låter det? This is also a good sign if they actually meet you next week for that fika. But in any case, if a Swede wants to spend more time with you, it's a good sign. They see you as a potential friend. But don't get your expectation up too high. You're not getting that invitation to their midsummer party at their summer house yet. The Swede needs to test you a bit more before they decide if you are their friend. But you're on the right way, and you must have done something that the Swede liked. And same thing with all my foreign friends. We have common interests and similar values. And this brings us to our next step. Step 5. Learn more about Swedish values, culture and mentality. While you're drinking beer or having fika with a Swede, they will be analyzing you. And maybe they will ask themselves, is this a person with similar values as mine? Someone I would like to spend my time with and even introduce to my family and friends. And for this, it can be good to know more about some core Swedish values. These can of course vary a bit, since not every Swede is the same, but in general, these are some things that Swedes dislike and that you should perhaps avoid if you want to make a Swedish friend. Things like skryta, our word for bragging. Bragging or showing off, it's not considered to be very nice here. Maybe a bit due to this jantelagen thingy. Showing off your car, saying things like I'm very rich, I'm very good looking, would just make the Swede think that you are dryg. Something very negative here. The definition of dryg is someone who considers themselves to be better or more important than others, often in an immature way, like showing off their cars. This can of course be bad in other cultures as well, but I would say that in Sweden it's extra bad. Some Swedes are rich, but most wouldn't show it off so much to other people, especially not to people that have less than them. In general, in Sweden it's like this. If you are rich, you need to be humble about it. They say that the owner of IKEA did this when he lived in Sweden. He drove this very simple car that he had had for many years, even though he could afford more expensive ones. So try to be ödmjuk, our word for humble, if you want to make Swedish friends. Another thing Swedes hate is people not respecting your time. So if you want to be friends with Swedes, be punctual, always. If you decide to meet with a Swede at 7, then you show up at 7. If there's a problem with the train or something and you will be late due to this, then you need to inform the Swede as soon as possible why you will be late, how late, and perhaps also a solution to this problem. Especially if you meet at a public place, outdoors, when it's really cold. Then it's extremely rude to make someone wait. Writing things like this, if you're running late, can perhaps fix the problem. Hej, jag missade precis tåget. The why you are late. Jag blir cirka 10 minuter försenad. How late? Du kan gå in till kaféet och sätta dig så länge. The solution. Include all this if you're running late. But also, don't miss the train every time you will meet the Swede. The Swede will remember this. So try to be punctual. And I would say that it's also important to be punctual if you go into a Swede's house. Maybe it's a little bit more okay to be perhaps 5 to 30 minutes late if it's a gathering where there will be other guests as well. But if you are the only guest and there will be fika or dinner served, then you better get there on time. Or write the same message as I mentioned before to say that you're running late. Why this? Well, Swedes in general like to have everything prepared when the guests arrive. And this can be a big difference compared to other countries where it's more okay and more normal to prepare the dinner while your guests are there. I noticed that this is more common in Spain, in Argentina at least. A personal story. We had some Argentinian relatives visiting us in Sweden. We introduced them to my mom's friend, a very nice Swedish lady, and they connected very well. So much that this Swedish lady even invited them over for a fika the day after at 3 o'clock while we were working. But what happened? Well, my Argentinian relatives, they didn't show up at 3 o'clock. They were still at the hotel at 3 o'clock. And they didn't even inform the Swedish lady that they were late. In their defense, in general, in Argentina, it's less strict to show up on time if you're invited to someone's house. But in Sweden, it is. This Swedish lady had already the coffee and the kanelbullar served at 3 o'clock. At 3:30, she called us to ask what had happened with our relatives. We told her that they were on their way. She got upset and said that she had said at 3 o'clock because she had to be somewhere else at 6. This made her very stressed and annoyed. We of course apologized for our relatives and explained a little bit more how it works in Argentina with punctuality. In the end, they showed up at 4, 1 hour late. Thankfully, they apologized, brought her some flowers, and they did have a good time in the end, even though they could only spend 2 hours together. And this Swedish lady was a little bit more forgiving to them, since they were, after all, not Swedes. But if they would have been Swedes, it would have been even worse, because Swedes expect other Swedes to know and respect punctuality. From a Swedish point of view, if you're not respecting my time, you will probably not respect other things in my life, which makes you a bad friend. Moving on. Another thing that can be good to know is that most Swedes don't like people that are too honest or too direct. Saying things like, you have gained some weight, will not give you a Swedish friend. When a Swede gives some kind of feedback or critique to another Swede, they say it in a more less direct way. Oh, I have gained so much weight during Christmas. It feels like everybody does. Is it the same for you? Or another example. If you don't like the books you're reading in your book circle, then most Swedes wouldn't say, I don't like this book we are reading. They will instead try to suggest if you can include some other books as well. And by this also avoiding to hurt the feelings of those who actually chosen those boring books. I think a reason why we are less direct with what we want or what we feel is because we are a little bit konflikträdda, scared of conflicts. But again, of course, it doesn't apply to all Swedes, but in general, I would suggest you to be less direct if you want to become friends with a Swede. Swedes also dislike people that interrupt others. In general, you need to let other people tala till punkt, which is basically how we say let them finish their sentence. So if a Swede is talking about something and you interrupt them, then they will find it very disrespectful. I know that in other cultures it can actually be a good thing to interrupt when someone is talking, especially if you confirm what the other person is saying. Maybe you say something like, I know, it happened to me as well, blah 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 blah. So again, it's kind of a way to show that you're interested in what the person is saying. You didn't fall asleep. But in Sweden, it works the opposite way. You need to let them finish talking before you respond. Svenskarna väntar på sin tur. And this can also be a reason why it seems like Swedes are uninterested in what you are saying, just because they're waiting for you to finish, so they will respond. So if a Swede is just sitting there silent while you're talking, it might just be our way to show respect. We're just waiting for you to finish before we respond. And I think that no way is better than the other, it's just different. And if you want to know more about Swedish values, what we consider to be rude, and maybe things we do that you consider is rude, then you should check out these videos I made together with Joakim from Say It in Swedish. And in general, Swedes dislike people that generalize or are too negative towards Sweden and Swedes. So saying things like, Swedes are very cold people, won't give you a Swedish friend. Being positive in general towards Sweden and Swedes will make them like you more. And you can and you should, of course, criticize us. But I would say that most Swedes would appreciate if you don't generalize too much. and maybe you can say things like this instead. I have noticed that some Swedes are very cold. Is this a thing, or have I just met the wrong kind of Swedes? This kind of comment will be more okay. So this was a little bit about the Swedish mentality. That will hopefully help you to get that Swedish friend. Let's move on to our next step. Number 6. Learn Swedish. Even though Swedes are great at speaking English, it's not our first language.
That is where you're landing this road, yes?
This is what we in Sweden call a väg.
A väg.
A väg, yeah.
A väg, all right.
Most Swedes don't feel as comfortable speaking English as Swedish. It's harder for us to joke or being ourselves in English, just like it can be for those learning Swedish. That's why we prefer to speak our own language and spend more time with people that know this language. So by learning Swedish, you will increase your chances to get Swedish friends. For sure. And we at Fun Swedish are of course here for you for that process. We will help you get those Swedish friends. If you are interested in our Swedish courses, we have all types of courses. And if you want to become friends with your Swedish work colleagues, then I recommend you to take our Swedish courses for companies. Here's the link for more information about that. In my case, all my foreign friends knew some Swedish. Maybe it wasn't perfect, but their Swedish were good enough so that I could switch to Swedish or explain something in Swedish if I couldn't find the English word. And this was so helpful and made it easier for me to hang out with them. So again, learn Swedish if you want a Swedish friend. Step number 7. Find the right Swedes. Some people that say that it's hard to find Swedish friends are perhaps looking for the wrong kind of Swedes. There's actually a group of Swedes that will love to have more friends, and they have no problem talking to strangers in the elevator. Can you guess what group I'm talking about? Yes, the older people. Some of them are quite alone and would love to have a fika with someone. And they will have time for you because they are pensionärer. They might also be great language buddies and can help you with your Swedish. Do you remember that story that I told you about my mom's friend? The nice lady who invited over foreigners to her house. Hon var en svensk pensionär. And if you befriend a grandma or a granddad, you might even get to know their children or their grandchildren who might be your age. More kompisar. So if you feel a bit lonely in Sweden, make contact with Svenska pensionärsföreningar or do some volunteering helping out older Swedes. Step 8. Reflect on yourself. It's understandable that you want to make new friends when you move to a new country. You feel alone and you miss your friends back home. However, this is not the unique things for foreigners moving to Sweden. Also, Swedes want this when they move abroad. Everyone wants friends, and it's easy to forget this. So take a minute to reflect on yourself. How many friends do you have or have you had in your home country that were immigrants? Maybe you are super social and you have many foreign friends, but I think most people don't make friends with foreigners or immigrants so easily. Maybe the language barrier is one of the reasons, and sometimes it can be that you just feel that you have enough friends already. Your childhood or your high school friends perhaps. And since you work and have a lot of things going on, you don't have time to make new friends as well. Especially if you start having kids and all that. They consume you a lot of time. We all find it a bit hard to make new friends when we are in a new place, especially in the beginning. But I do agree, it's perhaps a little bit harder in Sweden. Or what do you think? Let me know in the comment section below. Step 9. How to know that a Swede now sees me as their friend. The easy answer is when they refer to you as their kompis, vän, polare to other people. And for a Swede, en kompis är en kompis. We wouldn't use this word, friend, if we didn't mean it. And Swedes are very factual. You can also be sure that they see you as their friend when they invite you to their house. Ways is a big thing in Sweden. Well, we're not very famous for being very spontaneous. We like to plan things ahead. One of the reasons is that we like to clean the house beforehand. Dammsuga and maybe baka something for the guests. In our culture, things need to be almost perfect when the guests arrive. So if we invite you to our house, it means that we have been doing this the whole day, just for you, because you're special. You're our friend. Step 10. Final step. You have now en svensk kompis. Grattis! And some extra good news for you. When you get a Swedish friend, it's normally for life, and they will invite you to hang out with their inner circle, their friends. So more potential Swedish friends for you. Now, dear followers, I want to know your opinion about this topic. Maybe you have another good tip to share with our fun Swedish community. Let us know in the comment section below. And before you go, don't forget to put a like and subscribe. Hej då!